Welcome to another episode of the Winning with Insights podcast. My name is Mike. I am the founder of GTM Diagnostics, a market research company focused on win-loss analysis. Today with me, a special guest. Today we have Sean. He is the co-founder of Motives.ai, your customer insights partner, a tool that helps you with qualitative research. Sean, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here. Excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. Like, we've been in contact over the past few months already. Um, I'm a big fan of what you guys are actually doing at Motives.ai. But before we get into all the fun stuff that you guys are doing, could you perhaps introduce yourself a little bit more? Like, what have you done in the past? Where have you been? And what actually led you to get started with Motive?
Sounds great. So, like you said, I'm the co-founder of Motives.ai. I'm the CEO, so I'm the non-technical one uh, compared to my co-founder who's the CTO. So my background is more on the product management side. I've been working at a number of tech companies over the last 7 or 8 years before doing this, doing mix of product management and sales. Um, Largely at a mix actually of AI companies, fintech companies, and Google. Before that, I actually started my career in international development research, which I think is part of what brought me back full circle to being in the research world again with Motives, and then combining that with this kind of AI tool tech building experience I had is large part of what led me here.
Wow, that is like a very, it makes so much sense based on what you have done that you actually ended up here.
And I'm not
So,
sure it ever did at the time. It felt really meandering journey, but then yeah, it all has kind of come together and into what I'm doing
yeah,
now.
well, I'm glad that you ended up here because else we might not have ever met. So, hey, Sean, before we get into what Motives actually does for its customers, like you've recently went through a change, a rebranding exercise, if you want to call it like this. So perhaps you can take us a little bit backwards into how you got started and what
Yes.
led you actually into the rebranding, and hopefully that will actually guide us to the next part of the conversation.
Fantastic. So, yes, we've just gone through a big rebrand, updated the name, which was kind of the final step of what's been a uh, reasonably drawn out pivot process, which I think is probably fairly normal for startups that go through pivots. So, for background, we started the company now about 2 years ago, and actually started in a similar but very different space where we were doing a tool for software teams to get all of their user feedback all in one place and organize it and connect it to your roadmap so that you could kind of connect the customer needs more closely to the work that the engineering team actually does. The idea being there's so much wastage in when people are building software, and even though you're trying to listen to your customers, it's very difficult. You're hearing all sorts of feedback from all different places. As I'm sure you think
Yep.
about a lot with GTM Diagnostics, there's all sorts of things you can learn about the market, but then kind of actioning it correctly and balancing it with your company strategy is a pain. So the name of the company at the time, and the name we had until our recent rebrand, only a few weeks ago, was Beetroot, and it was a fun name because it was actually an acronym BTRT, which stood for Build the Right Thing, which is kind of our
Ah,
motivating uh, vision of the company when we first started it, to help companies build the right thing and stop wasting all this time, with features nobody ever uses, and uh, failing to kind of build the features that would actually resonate with their customers. So we were doing that for a while and couldn't quite get it to land correctly. I think there was this whole other podcast about kind of reflections on pre-pivot experiences. But one thing we found is, well, there's a couple of things we found. One of which was we started thinking about and adding some um, LLM features. And, of course, it was a little bit getting caught up in the hype. I think we were thinking, what can we add here that will catch people's eyes? But it was also trying to do something very different. And, all of a sudden now in every space, there's things you could not have done 2, 3 years ago before the release of the newest kind of LLM models of the last few years. So we're trying to find where can we add value with that. And one
Mhm.
place was, better interpreting qualitative user feedback, and especially the type you might get from doing user interviews, which is, a core part of any company understanding their customers.
Yeah.
Um, and a thing we learned from that is that people really weren't doing enough user interviews or weren't doing as many as they wanted. And whether that's you know, you're a consumer brand and just going out and talking to your customers, whether it's a software company and your product managers sitting down and talking with customers, your software engineers, anybody really. Whether it's in your case, talking to customers that you didn't close, like all these interviews have so much value, but it's so time consuming and so expensive to do them that a lot of people said, oh yeah, oh, of course, it's a top priority to talk to our customers. I had this experience over
Yep.
and over. And you'd say, well, okay, how many did you do in the last quarter? This is when we were thinking of building a tool to help better process user interviews. And they'd say, well, I guess we didn't do any, we haven't done any for 6 months, but they're really a top priority. This is a big, big priority for us.
Mm.
And so from kind of these learnings, okay, first of all, I guess our tool to help you process your user interviews, even though you say it's a priority and you want to use the tool, you actually aren't going to use it very often. But secondly, maybe if we could do the user interviews for you, maybe that would really be, the value you
Yeah.
need. And so that's kind of where the first spark of an idea for building an AI researcher that actually runs in-depth, high-quality video interviews like a really great human moderator would. That's kind of where the first spark of that idea came from.
Through your own user research, you found that this was an opportunity. Well,
That's exactly
you
right.
know, that's very good, Sean. So, okay, so the transition from BTRT, build the right thing, Beetroot, to Motives.ai went quite naturally, if at least to my understanding, driven by the hype, looking into differentiation, um, through your own research and talking to people, you came to the conclusion like, hey, there's like a gap. People want to do these research efforts, and it is a priority, but it's not being done, or at least not at the quantity that they would deem valuable. So, this is where you came to the idea to build a qualitative research bot, if you want to call it like this.
Hmm.
Um, which helps you basically scale your qualitative research efforts. Okay. So,
That's right. One thing I'll add though, just as a
oh, very good.
matter of interest, is that it sounds a lot smoother in hindsight than I think it feels. And I think I say this because it would have been useful for me to hear other people warn me about this ahead of time too. Is that's the day to day experience of
Yeah.
testing things, talking to your customers, learning from the insights feels a lot like getting slapped in the face over and over by things that don't quite work. But this is
Uh,
the experience to get to
yeah.
finding the things that do.
Without these prior learnings, you would not be there. You would not be where you are right now. So there's
Exactly.
like the journey also creates the destination, sort of. And actually, one of the interviews that I've done with the founder of Pointer Pro, which is an assessment platform. They also went through this initial phase where they started out as a survey, like a customer,
Mm.
like a CSAT tool, and then became like a full-on like assessment platform, which now also allows service providers to basically resell their assessments. So they actually added like a new business model. This is like a journey of 12 years, which is
Wow.
summarized in basically 3 sentences. So
And it sounds so
like
smooth when you summarize it that quickly,
exactly.
but
And it makes so much sense looking backwards, but that's okay.
exactly.
So, being a big proponent of qualitative research myself. There is always this battle between doing the numbers game versus the quality game. And
Mm,
what I mean by this is, like, for example, I can set out 100 million surveys, but the insights that you might get are not always of the highest quality, or at
mhm.
least you're lacking some depth in understanding. But if I'm doing like a one-on-one interviews, I can go really deep, but it's not a very scalable process. So the quality aspect of the interviews that you're doing, it needs to be very good to basically provide you with the insights that you can actually then work with. So
Yes.
when you're looking at the quality aspects of the AI interviewer, if you want to call it like this, I'm just going to call it like that.
Yeah,
It's my podcast. I can do whatever I want. No,
I won't object.
how are you ensuring that the quality of your interviews are like up to the standard,
Yeah,
whatever you want to call the standard?
this has been a huge focus for us, and it's interesting, thinking back on that journey too. The first step in this direction wasn't, oh, we have this idea, and then we made a great interviewer, and then it was smooth sailing. It was the first step was saying realizing people would use the interviewer. The very first version of the interviewer not being very good quality, them giving us a lot of feedback, and us making that better. And so there's a lot that goes into it. So uh, the 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 kind of real quality I think you're referring to is its ability to moderate well, its ability to ask good questions, its ability to understand the context of the space and the purpose of the research, and its ability to kind of ask relevant follow-up questions to dig deep for those insights and kind of pull at threads that people might expose but won't get into unless you ask good follow-up questions. So we have a few ways to kind of make sure that happens. So, because first of all, I think for background, if you go to ChatGPT and you say, "Run a user interview with me about whatever topic,"
X. Yeah.
it will do an impressive looking job, but it won't be that good. And I think you'll notice that if you try to talk to it for more than a couple back and forth. If you're actually trying to participate in a 30-minute interview, it will go off topic a bit, or it will just kind of go treat it like a survey and just jump from question to question. So that was, it requires a lot of work to do this well. So we have a few things. One is we have a kind of complex system that feeds in different pieces of information at different times. We're kind of chaining together a series of different LLM approaches behind the
Hmm.
scenes to give the participant the feeling that they're just having one steady conversation. And so we can feed in things like the amount of time left in the interview, the kind of objectives of the overall research, some background context about the area where it's relevant. So that if you mention something, a little bit off topic, but maybe interesting to the company that wasn't specifically specified as a question to ask about, the researcher can know and then ask kind of the follow-up information, ask follow-up questions about that. We also have an elaborate system of interview testing. So we have our interviewer run kind of fake interviews with fake like LLM participants basically for any new topic. And so we can actually run it a bunch, and then we have an AI evaluator to kind of basically give feedback to the interviewer about that particular topic. And so we kind of custom train each interviewer for each project through this like automated setup, which is cool because then you get this like very, what you end up getting is an interviewer very specialized in your specific topic
Yeah.
as well, who then, when it goes to talk to real people, already has gotten, basically lots of practice and guidance into how to handle different people. And it's funny behind the scenes we have different types of AI participants. There's the people who are reluctant to give good answers, and the people who talk too much, and the people who go off topic, and all this stuff. Um, so all of that together leads to the kind of interviewer we have now, which, for the last few months testing it, we've tested it against kind of real research projects, and we've tested it with in collaboration with projects with a lot of like very experienced researchers from research agencies and companies. And the feedback now, and we've put some of it on our testimonials page on our website, is consistently like very, very impressed with how high quality it is. And I think the first time someone told me, wow, this interviewer is as good as like the junior people on my team that I've been training to do interviews, or was better than the junior people. I think that was a big moment for us. Like, okay, there is really some possibility here to do this.
Yeah, yeah, I was also when testing it myself, very impressed with the quality of questions that were
Mm,
asked and the ability of the AI researcher to listen. Um, and but it all, for me, at least when I'm doing my own research project, it all starts with like the setup in advance. Like, what's the hypothesis? What is the objective of the research? So in what way are you guiding your end users into this setup? Or is your ideal customer who you're building this for somebody that's already a little bit further ahead with their own methodology, basically, like being experienced in doing research, where you're just providing some of the legwork? Like, basically, what I'm asking, like, who are you building this for? And what is it that they are experiencing when it comes to um, like the bottlenecks in their own research efforts?
yeah, that's been such a fun topic for us too, because especially early on, this startup experience of narrowing down your target customer and trying to get it as niche as possible, and then thinking about the different feedback you get from people who are slightly different, even though they have the same, job title and the same kind of role on paper, has been a very interesting iteration. So I'm very happy with where we've ended up, which is further leveraging the ability of AI when well configured to be a really good research assistant, basically. So at the moment, we kind of support two different types of input. Um, so, on the one hand, if you're a really experienced researcher and you say, okay, I know exactly what I want to do, I've written out this detailed interview guide. I, need it to, I would hand this to a human moderator and expect them to follow it very
Yeah.
closely. We can take that in. We can have the AI interviewer follow that guide pretty closely, only straying it off it like a human might, as described, to kind of pull out interesting threads or dig deeper in interesting places. Um, but I think we used to see more of that in our kind of the first few months we were doing this, when people, I think, kind of didn't trust our interviewer that much. Understandably, we had just gotten started and would want to be very prescriptive with, here's exactly what I've found.
Hmm.
What we also support is we have a newer feature where you can actually chat to our AI and it will help you put together the kind of project plan. And it can actually just take a single sentence. So you can say, I don't know, let's say you're selling shoes in the UK. You say, I want to know what middle-aged men, how they currently choose their sporting shoes. You could tell us just that, and then our AI will put together a plan for, okay, here's the type of people I would target. Here are the questions I would ask them, and it will show that to you and ask you if you want to have any changes. And it will also have some clarifying questions where it doesn't have quite enough information. It might say, okay, tell me a little bit more about your business. Tell me a little bit more about um, the that's the reason you need this research, like who's asking for it internally. And that's been so interesting because I think to us, when we were first getting started, we figured, oh, people will know, people who have a research need, they'll know kind of what research they want. But often I think people know the kind of business question they have, but that jump to knowing the right way to do the research isn't easy, and it takes a lot of work and brain power and internal alignment. And so we've had a couple of
Hmm.
cases we actually kind of just shipped the um, first version of this AI chat in the last few weeks. And we've had a couple of cases already. People who were taking, there was one who had actually been taking months to try to define the project they were doing with us. And it was they would have like a lot of internal meetings and thinking about, what's the right kind of research we need. And this unblocked them, I think, to be able to just dump what was in their head into our AI very quickly. It then clarified a bunch of stuff for them, made it easy for them to kind of pull out the information. And now we have a really nice, well-drafted plan that our AI put together, that they
That's
were able
really
to just
cool.
get final approval from all their stakeholders on. And so I think having that as a kind of aid, it's like having a great research consultant sitting next to you
Yeah,
24/7. You say, "Here's this business question." And you say, "Great, here's the research I'm going to do." Tweak any details if you need. It's been a really
yeah.
cool feature.
That's right. Yeah, it opens up the um the amount of use cases that you can support. Not or maybe not use cases, but like the people that can leverage research and run a research program. So you
Yeah,
don't, yeah,
exactly.
it broadens like your basically it opens up the target market for you guys.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think our goal is to make any kind of this kind of in-depth qualitative research accessible to
yeah,
any company and any
yeah,
person. Anyone who says, "I have this business question," I think we want them to have this. It's kind of this new paradigm of like AI service as a software. It's like
yeah,
now anyone can afford a really great qualitative researcher to go out and talk to their customers and get them all the insights and make it really
yeah.
easy. That's where we want to be, to make that like totally seamless.
I think it's like that. Yeah, like the service through software.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's also been my vision.
Mm.
Um, okay, but these are very two distinctive groups of people that you are then serving. So because we have like the experienced researcher and we have the business person that just wants a response to a question or
Yes.
wants to run like certain research. So if we take a look at the more experienced researcher, like what has been like the main concern when it comes to not just the quality of the research, but also, for example, stuff like partition rates, or even once the interview has been done, like for example, running the analysis or doing like the analytics. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about that process once they've been basically, how do you say, convinced about the quality?
Yep.
What comes next? Like, what are then certain hurdles that you need to jump over?
Yeah, and I appreciate the way you put that question too, framing the business people and the experienced researchers, because I think in some sense what I see us as doing is working early on with the experienced researchers to really battle test our product and to make sure the quality's, they're going to be the ones most diligent about making sure the quality is good, which will give us the feedback we need to make the quality
Yeah,
really, really good. And then we can scale more. I think, obviously the market is bigger in the business people who just have questions. And so we're starting to do
yeah,
some of that already. But I think having this kind of split focus with the researchers being a big priority at first is a big, big help for us improving the quality. Um, so the the couple things you mentioned there. So one, the participants, um, has been another really interesting topic as well. Like, will people even talk to an AI
exactly. Yeah,
moderator? And so this is a very common conversation I have in sales calls. Is people say, "Well, I don't think people will like that," and it's a fear we had as well. Our very first version, like my co-founder is very good at kind of early validation before building any software. So the very
mm,
first version was, we went on some user research scheduling site, picked some topic about your favorite sports or something, scheduled some user interviews, had not built an AI moderator at all, told people that they'd be talking to an AI moderator to see if anyone would even be willing to do it. And then my co-founder, Sam, sat there on Zoom with his camera off and made his name AI moderator. And everything they said, he just he copy pasted the transcript into ChatGPT, copy pasted its, kind of awkward questions back into the Zoom chat, where we had told them you'll only get asked questions in the Zoom chat. And we thought maybe there's this experiment. Maybe no one will even do this. Maybe they'll turn off the call after 2 minutes of getting asked Zoom chat questions by an AI that's not even asking very good questions. And amazingly, everyone we tested with that was totally happy to do it, even though it was really, really slow. You can imagine how slow it is to copy paste,
mm.
copy
Oh, this
paste.
is really cool.
It was fascinating, and it's a fun story too. I think of like ways you can do validation.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical because I thought, well, maybe they won't talk to that because it's so clunky. But if we build the UI and the UX better, it'll be better. But even the clunky version, people were very happy to participate in. And then obviously we've made it way, way, way better in all the relevant ways to make the experience better. But that has been a big focus for us because things like bias in your recruitment. So we did a project recently about care homes. So they wanted to speak to people only
Hmm.
above the age of 70, and they were afraid at first that people above the age of 70 are never going to talk to an AI moderator, and they'll struggle to use the software. But we'd put such a big focus on making it easy to get in the call. It's like
Yeah.
joining a video call, just like you're getting on Google Meet. There's no software you have to download, anything like that. Very clear. It's like basically, one
Yeah.
button, agree to terms and conditions, one button, join the call. Very, very simple. And so it's been really, really smooth. And this kind of experienced agency we've been working with to run this care home research. And they've been kind of blown away by how good the quality is and how able we are to have conversations with people in this type of group. So that's kind of the participant experience. The other thing I'll mention that's been so interesting is, and this was maybe even a surprise to us. I thought it'd be good and we could get it kind of to the similar level as human moderator. But what we've heard from a lot of participants is they actually feel more comfortable being more honest with an AI moderator than they would with a human, because I think it creates this very kind of private space. There's
Hmm.
absolutely no worry about judgment or bias. The interviewers, this kind of very neutral space where you kind of, I think, feel like you're in this very private
Yeah.
conversation, even more so than you would even just with a one-on-one with a human. And so we have been getting feedback from interviewees pretty consistently that they feel like they can be very open. And some of the results show that too. We've done some research on sensitive medical topics and sensitive, kind of almost ethical topics. And it's been kind of fascinating to see how people interact with a AI moderator and are so open with sharing that. So that's been a lot of fun too.
That is a very interesting take there. People are more open or feel more comfortable sharing their story with an AI because there is no judgment.
Yeah.
Like it's a completely neutral. Even because that is one of the things that we do as like a market research agency company, if you want to call it like this. Like one of the reasons people use a third party when doing, for example, their win-loss interviews or churn interviews or whatever.
Yes.
Like it is because we are a neutral third party and people don't want to call your baby ugly, so they tell us that your baby is ugly. That is
Yes.
basically what is happening here.
Exactly. And this is
Um,
a challenge for anyone building
yeah,
something new is if you interview people about what they think, they're going to be nice to you, and so you need, as you
exactly.
say, a third party to go interview them.
Uh, you don't need to, but I would highly recommend you do.
Right. Sorry. Sorry. Exactly. You often you should do it
But
yourself too,
you should
but
always come to it. No, it's no, but that is it is a very interesting take there. Like it's people are concerned initially about the quality. Like I get that was also one of the things that I was concerned about. Like, hey, how good will this
yeah.
like language model actually be in understanding the finer nuances when it comes to doing qualitative research? Turns out they're pretty fucking good and they are only getting better.
Yeah.
So you're going to think about other things that might be an objection of why you should not use something like this in your research efforts. And then, well, what if the participation rates or the participation, or how you said, like the participant score, if you want to call it like
Mhm.
this, is going to be lower because you're using an AI. And then it turns out, though, that people are actually curious in the beginning.
Mhm.
Could be different in the near future where it's like, oh, again, we have another AI interviewer, but that's we'll see when we come to that point.
Mhm.
And it turns out like, no, people are actually they feel comfortable talking to this. And I think it's also being supported by a different study where um people also felt that, for example, ChatGPT was more considerate and when it came to, like, for example, healthcare, asking questions, doing like
Yeah,
the
I could imagine.
screening. Yeah. So it's quite interesting to go there. But then we need to take this into like a different direction, because then, okay, so now we know that it's not about the quality of the interview. It's not about the way that participants feel. It's so what could be next? And um I also talked a little bit about the analytics, because
Yes.
you we have the research objective. That is something that we've discussed in the beginning. There are maybe different topics or themes below the objective that you want to analyze. Um, how would that process look like? Because that is something that I'm also always very like concerned about when I'm looking into different tools that might support my research efforts. Like, how well does the analytics side work, basically?
And
Uh,
this again is a crucial thing for us because what we really care about is making it kind of seamless for you to benefit from research, not just making it, a little bit quicker, but still you have to do tons and tons of work. So you don't want, okay, here's 20 transcripts and 20, 30-minute video recordings of interviews with people. Now kind of go through and see what you can get. Like what you want is the takeaways. And then the information is there for you to kind of dive deeper where you want. And so getting the takeaways to be accurate is fundamental for the kind of value of our tool. And so again, this is, I think, interesting kind of background is maybe to mention a little bit of the challenge, which is a thing you can do is you can drop a bunch of transcripts into ChatGPT and say, you're a research evaluator. Tell me the main takeaways from these interviews.
yeah.
And it will give you probably what it will give in most cases what it gives you is something like it'll give you a very nice sounding summary that sounds very
Yeah.
professional, and it will mostly be based on the either the first or the last transcript in the text, and it will not pull out interesting things. It will not find interesting patterns across the transcripts.
No.
You've had a similar experience.
Yeah. I've experienced with this a lot.
And it looks good. At first
Uh,
you think, "Oh, wow, this is amazing." And then you read the
yeah.
transcripts, you're like, "This isn't actually the key thing."
No.
So again, this is something we put a ton of work into, kind of a very complicated system behind the scenes, uh, structuring the information from the different transcripts, pulling out key themes from each transcript, comparing them against each other, then going back for major themes and actually going through a loop where you then go look for those things in the transcripts. So it's actually a little bit we're doing what a human would do, where you kind of we call it qualitative
Tagging.
coding. You kind of tag
Yeah,
the main
exactly.
things
Yeah.
and then loop through adding new tags based on new things you're
Yeah.
finding and then go back and look for those again. So
Yeah.
we have a system that looks something like what a human would do, but all with AI running behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Which means we can then have this very um, kind of structured approach from all the way from the transcripts to the takeaways we give you, and we can connect it all
Mhm.
together. So we can give you the takeaways and say, here's the three main things based on the business question. Like here's kind of the three things you need to know, and each one of those is supported by a number of quotes from the interviews. And you can
Mhm.
actually click on any of the quotes and go back and see, okay, here's the context, here's the spot in the
Yeah.
video where they were talking about that. And so you can actually go back and watch. If you're curious for more detail, you can kind of go back and watch, which is obviously something traditional research, you just get a nice PDF. You can't kind of bring to life any single moment. And similarly, we can create highlight reels. So you could say, okay, people really hated this specific concept. And here's a 2-minute video of 8 people talking about exactly why
Talking
they
about
hated
that
it.
specific.
And
Yeah.
you can bring that, to the boardroom or whatever it is to really bring to life, like, here's what the customers are actually saying about this topic, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
that has always been like something very important. Is like, because you're actually bringing like the voice of the customer into the room, and having quotes is very nice, but actually like this is the video of somebody talking. Like you can hear the words, you can hear the intonation, you can see their
Yes.
expression. And there's a lot of value in this also, which is also one of the reasons why we do a lot of like when we do the interviews ourselves, like through a consultant, like we always record them because you want to have that like visual aspect as well.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly. And I think in a world with LLMs being so common, just seeing written text, I think we're all getting a little bit of blindness and skepticism
yeah,
to random pieces of written text on a page. And so if you can
um,
bring it to life with, well, here's the person actually talking about it.
exactly. And you can fake words, but there's okay, of course, like, okay, well, I'm not going into this, but like having, oh, sorry, having actually like you're looking at the person, like this is actually what this
Yeah.
person is saying about you instead of a quote that could be random or falsified. But that's a like a very different
It,
discussion. Okay,
but agreed. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but this is okay. So we went through like the quality, we went through the analytics. Um, there's a lot of stuff that goes into like running proper qualitative analysis, but I like the loop. Um, I think it's a smart. It's like the human way
Hmm.
of analyzing. So let's say I'm setting up my research. Like this is almost me asking just about how about your product and why I should buy it. So with this, okay, so I'm going to have like a research objective. I'm going to say like, hey, these are like some of the topics or themes that I want you to basically find for
Yep.
me. Like we've set up the interview guide, but I want to run this through the analysis because, for example, when we do win-loss analysis, we look at decision drivers. Like,
Hmm.
is this something that also that has been taken into consideration? Like, hey, but these are actually like 5 topics that you need to like analyze for me. And if there are additional themes or trends that you've identified, like I would love to know about that. But these
Yes.
5, they are my highest priority.
Yeah, that's really common is we've got these specific things we're looking for, but the reason we're doing qual is we think there might be other things that come out and we would like to
Yeah,
know those too, but we do need to investigate these
exactly.
5. So that's it. You can kind of put in you can basically put in what you already have. We want to make it easy for you to kind of
Hmm.
give us, yeah, okay, obviously the company has these 5 key things that we care about, but we don't know, it could be anything else. And
Yeah.
then like I was saying with our kind of AI chat, you can put those in. It will then flesh out the details of how to ask your questions about the other things. It will take the overall objectives of what you're looking for
Hmm.
into consideration and then kind of create a really good research project based on that.
Sounds like you've done stuff like this in the past, Sean.
It's been a busy last 12 months.
Yeah, well, also with like setting up like a research project, like
Mm,
it's always helpful when you've had experience with a
yeah,
specific thing in the past,
exactly.
um, and then certain things just kind of fall into place. So for me, when I hear all this, like so, it's like it's been set up in a way that has been smart. Like you've looked into experienced researchers to validate certain things, like ways that they are looking to perform research and maybe even ways in which you can then use this as like creating like the research partner for
Hmm.
regular business people. And the way that you do this is like it starts with the quality, the way with the setup, the objectives, etc. Then you perform the interviews. Like there are we this is like an like how to get people to actually participate. It's an entirely different discussion. It goes with like the type of people that you want to talk to. Like incentivizing versus not incentivizing,
Hmm.
who is
Hmm.
making the introduction versus, for example, like a salesperson asking straight up, like, "Hey, can you tell me why you did or did not buy?"
Right.
It's like people don't really want to respond to this because it feels almost as if they want you to like come back or like, "Hey, we're
Right,
still
right,
in the
right.
process." So there are a lot of nuances in that part. So we're not going to dive into this for now, but there is one burning question for me, and this is like, hey, there are a lot of alternatives when
Mm,
it comes to research. So when I'm doing research, I've mainly put it in 2 buckets. There's like a one-on-one and a one-to-many.
yep.
A one-on-one could be like a survey, for example, because it's like one person fills in one survey and they have like a whole lot of data, which can be both qualitative and quantitative, but it often lacks depth. And a one-on-one could be, for example, doing like interviews via a consultant or an agency, or you do it yourself. And this is also where I would put Motives, because there's like a one-on-one interview through an AI. It's a
Yep.
different channel. And then you have like a one-to-many, which is, for example, having like a customer advisory board or talking to focus groups. Um, so there are many different like alternatives. Like, how would you stack up Motives against like the most common alternatives when it comes to doing research?
I think this is right. So I think there's kind of a traditional spectrum in which we could think of in terms of kind of cost versus scale
Yeah.
versus depth, which is like you can send a survey to tons of people and you won't get that much depth, but you'll get a lot of answers. Or you could sit down and interview a handful of people, but for the same budget, you're only going to talk to a very small handful of people because it gets very, very expensive to have a human moderator, to have a good human team write up all the results and kind of connect it back to all the calls. And so it's kind of cost prohibitive to do that at very much scale. And so people have kind of in the past had to choose between these, and focus groups
Yeah.
are often a way to kind of um, find a bit of a middle ground. I think people often do them because they're just for the reason that they're cheap and fast, and so they have some advantages in terms of seeing people interact, but often
Mhm.
people also worry about bias introduced in this conversation from everyone following what the loudest person says, this
Yeah.
type of thing, kind of the group
Yeah.
thing getting
That's
into the group. And so I think really their focus groups are this kind of compromise for like
Mhm.
low cost, high speed to get a bit more scale. If you feel like, oh, we need to talk to 50 people, let's run, 6 focus groups of 8 people each or something like that. What we think is because of this rapid technology change is that there's this kind of paradigm shift of what's possible. And so because the AI solution can be, for one thing, way, way faster than any of the traditional methods, we can get results back in just a day or two in depth. We talk to 50
Yep.
people in 24 hours. Um, and then obviously the cost is much, much, much lower too than traditional approaches. So now how we see Motives fitting in is it lets you do in-depth qualitative research, get this kind of real depth and understanding your customers
Yeah.
at a price point that previously was kind of only for the kind of quick quant research through surveys and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
it kind of fits in that way. And so when I think about alternatives too, the other big right now, I think what a lot of people are not doing as much research as they should be doing.
Yeah.
They say, oh, they're saying in meetings, oh, we really should talk to some customers, and they say, well, qual research, organizing that will cost us 10 grand, 20 grand. Like it's going to be a really, really expensive proposition. We can't afford to do that.
Could be even more.
Or yeah, 50 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, big companies do 50 grand, 100
Yeah.
grand, 500 grand. If you want to do it internationally, which is another advantage of our AI, can speak other languages. So now for
Yeah,
people
we have
who
no
aren't doing
that's
it,
yeah.
so for people who aren't doing it at all, I think is kind of the most common alternative is just not doing enough. And we hope by
Yeah.
making it much more affordable and much faster, it now suddenly can start to make
Yeah.
sense to use it for a lot more of the times you need it.
And to be honest, like it helps me as somebody that performs research to not only be like my bulk of the time is spent on like capturing data, and then like the actual value is transforming the data into these insights that are actionable.
Yes.
And for example, like especially with win loss, there are certain things that we do, which is like, hey, either there's like an actionable insight, like a quick win, change this, and it's going to improve, or it helps us to actually formulate a very good problem statement, which
Mm.
then you need to solve. So there could be like this could be something that has to do with like pricing, features,
Yep.
your packaging, or whatever. Like there could be many different things. But if we can now focus on more like, hey, what are we actually going to do looking forward instead of, hey, like we're spending a lot of time doing research like this, that then it becomes like a lot more valuable. And I think also that this is going to be part of the future for consultancy firms who rely heavily on like qualitative research. Like you
Yeah.
need to like make sure that you're staying competitive. Also, that you're trying to make like your operational spend go down by just leveraging smart technology so that you can apply your like expertise on these data points that you've collected. So,
Exactly.
well, there's a reason that we are in contact for
Exactly right.
for over quite some time now. So we are actually nearing the end of our conversation, which is a shame because everybody else I've given a little bit more time, but unfortunately, my own calendar doesn't allow it to continue for much longer. But I do want you to explain a little bit more about like your vision for the future. So, when looking at motives and the qualitative research field, like what are certain things that you believe in that will be true in the upcoming like 3 to 5 years?
Mm, that's a great question. So I think we've touched on it a little bit because it's this like speed and affordability, real paradigm shift. And I think that's happening with us, but it's also happening. There's lots and lots of tools in the research space that are making it kind of, much easier to get insights from your customers much more quickly and kind of bring them into your business. And so I think, 3 to 5 years from now, this will just be normal and everyone will have some kind of suite of tools like motives that they're using to kind of get a regular understanding from their customer. And I think what this will lead to is an enormous amount more consumer, let's say market research, consumer research, B2B research, whatever it is, because it will become so
Hmm.
much more affordable. And I
Yeah.
think there will need to be a big shift. Sometimes what we see now is people are surprised by how quickly they get the results back. And often everyone's trying to move fast and that's helpful. But I think a lot of businesses are set up now expecting that research results will take a month or two, if not longer, to get back. And so they're not ready to make any decisions if they get the research back in only 2 days. And so I think there will be a culture shift where people realize, I can go from a meeting, ask a follow-up question. Before the follow-up meeting, we already have the results back of really high quality in-depth research. And so, that's my vision for motives, that you are able to do that and just have this question come up, chat to our AI a little bit. It defines and runs a really in-depth research project for you. And kind of before you have time to even make any
Yeah.
decisions or choices, you already have the research back. And I think this will see the most kind of research forward companies have a huge advantage by leveraging these tools to be able to move the fast. They'll be able to move way faster, make decisions at a much higher quality, be really kind of customer centric in everything they do. And so I think we'll see this big shift in how people really embed that into their process,
Yeah.
by having this extra advantage of all this research at their fingertips all the time, highly relevant to what they're doing every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like I cannot agree more with you on this point. Especially when it comes to like being customer centric, that means that you need to put their perspective into your decision making. And when
Exactly.
you are leveraging these qualitative insights, which you can now get at scale because of like new technologies that have been emerging, motives being one of them. Like it's almost too good to be true, feels like, because like
Mm-hmm.
wow, like this is something that was very time consuming, it was very expensive, and now it can be there in a way shorter time and for way less money than it used to cost. And then like when you're working with someone like us who will perform like market research, we'll take these insights and we'll plot them against like your deal cycle. So we actually tag basically we take all the insights and we put them against other relevant data points so you can identify trends over time. And then like there's a lot of fun stuff which you can do afterwards when you put it in perspective of
Exactly.
other things within your organization.
Exactly. I think there's so much potential for how to use this research.
Yeah. I think we should do a different episode on like some bit more going into use cases because
Yeah,
we've stayed very high level and you've mentioned certain like types of research that you can support. You gave like the example which your like research consultant is basically having like, hey, types of shoes for middle-aged
Yeah.
men.
Yep.
So, but then like there are many like market research or customer research, user research projects that you can set up, and they all have their own nuances and intricacies. So I think would be very interesting to have like a follow-up conversation going a bit more into like use cases. Um,
That would be really fun.
but for now, I want to ask you one final question, or there are two actually. It's like it's a no-go when doing interviews. Like you're asking two questions in one. I know, but still. Um, so if you can go back in time when you first started out with BTRT, Beetroot, what is one thing that you would tell yourself to keep doing, and what is one thing that you would tell younger Sean to ditch immediately?
Ooh, tricky question. And I've reflected this a little bit myself, and in some ways, the kind of what you said, I think, is right, that the kind of struggles we went through are what ended us up here today. And in some sense, I don't, I'd like to think there was a shortcut to this, but um, I wonder sometimes. I think the kind of talking to customers and testing to iterating was crucial. We were doing some things, trying it out, testing it a new thing, trying it out, and like I said, it was like getting slapped in the face over and over by things not working that you were excited about. Um, and so I think I guess maybe that's then the second thing is like not getting discouraged, and it's kind of obvious. You just need to keep trying, as within some reasonable bounds, I guess. But I think having someone who's going through it tell you like you're gonna have a lot of rejection in kind of everything you're doing as a new business, but like that is how you find the gold. I kind of knew on an intellectual
Uh,
level, but I think really feeling it on an emotional level. I was lucky to have some people tell me about their experiences with it too, and I think that really is the crucial thing to just keep surviving through, and you kind of come out having learned so much from doing this research and getting these insights.
that's good. Like keep doing research, keep talking to your customers, and just keep going. Like that's very, very smart to say. What is one thing you would ditch immediately if you had to like go back like 2 years?
Um, that's interesting. I think we were lucky that we didn't waste tons of time on some distractions. I think you can kind of get distracted with other businessy things that aren't, very narrowly kind of product research, customer focused. Um, maybe not ditching entirely, but I think it's kind of the mistake you're not supposed to make, but so many people do is like um, building a little too much before testing it, like testing more, testing earlier,
Yeah,
testing with mock-ups, testing with, sitting on a Zoom call, pretending you're an AI, like this type of stuff. Um,
that was the best. That was the
yeah, and
best
so I think
example.
I think that would be one for sure.
Yeah, yeah. They like getting to your customers as soon as possible and basically let them tell you what is working and what is. That's very
Exactly,
valuable.
exactly. And so, in some put a different way,
Well,
in some sense, it's ditching too much optimism about one specific thing. I think you need to be optimistic about in general, but not attach that optimism too much to any single idea, so that you don't get too excited and pursue any single idea too far without thinking hard about each one.
yeah,
But that's
it's always
quite a
it's always
nuanced take, maybe.
difficult. Yeah, that's I think that's so difficult. Like being, how do you know when to basically like kill your baby versus raise him
I th-
or her?
I think
It's
it's it.
uh,
Yeah, I don't have a good answer to this either. Because on the flip, I should say on the flip side, some of what we're doing now was just conviction. Like I said, it's not like we
exactly.
did
Yeah,
it's not like we tested this fake AI interviewer and then we thought, oh, this is brilliant, it works perfectly. Like I said, the first few customers we worked with, they said, well, this isn't very good.
no,
And we
we
had to have
can
the conviction that we could make it better.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
so striking, that's why I'm kind of hesitant. It's hard for me to answer exactly about what the advice is, because yeah, finding that balance between I'm optimistic and we should just keep trying this because I have some conviction,
yeah.
versus this idea I should be willing to drop this idea because people don't like it. Also, sometimes we were talking to the wrong people, and they said I would never use this, and then we found somebody else, and they said I would totally use this, and it took a
Uh,
while to realize what is the difference between those people. But once you start seeing that, then you can say, oh, there is a market for this people. So, yeah, no, it's amazingly hard problem.
it is a fun problem to work on, to be honest. It's part of being like an entrepreneur, like a founder, trying to like get started. Like it's, I really like the advice. So um, don't be afraid to like kill your babies.
Mm,
That's like that is with like unless it's part of the conviction. Uh, and if you want to know
yeah.
more about that, I don't know, like go find help. Somebody who's done it. went- I think it has to do with like um what is like the end goal of this? Because like when you say like, hey, we believe that we can get like these customer insights at scale, and
mm,
that the future will encompass like everybody should be able to like leverage the qualitative insights that you can get from doing qualitative research. Um, and we believe that a way to get there is by leveraging technology in a smart way. Like if that is your conviction, then you can build around this.
hmm
And then like knowing that you're on the right track with like an AI interviewer, because end users have basically confirmed that this solution could be a fit, but that you just need to make sure that the solution is enough high quality enough to make sure that it actually solves the problem. That is different than saying like, oh, but we have now built this, which is might not be there yet, but we can also build something else. And then it becomes
Yeah,
distraction. That becomes a distraction. But then yeah.
I think that's a great way to
Once
put
some
it.
yeah, like if it's a little bit validated, like get quality in, and then if it's yeah, again, like, I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm not a successful entrepreneur yet, so who knows? Maybe in like 20, 30 years I can share some really cool like
you and I
stories
could
and
revisit this
experiences.
conversation 20 years from now and
Exactly.
see if
Exactly.
we have any different opinions.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for this conversation, and everybody else that is still listening. I hope you got a little bit enthusiastic about running your own like qualitative research project. If you need any help with running a research project, you could definitely hit up Sean from Motives.ai. Sean, what is like the best way for people to reach out to you or find you?
You can email me directly, Sean, SEAN, at motives.ai, or check out our website. You can reach out to us straight through there as well, motives.ai.
Awesome. I'll make sure that everything is in the show notes so that people are able to find you. If you want to learn more about how you can leverage Motives.ai in your win loss projects or in your win loss analysis, you can always also send me a message because we leverage Motives.ai for doing our own research. For now, I want to thank you all for spending your time with us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye bye.
Thanks so much, Mike. This is great. Talk to you soon.